There's still not clear what the reason was. Was this an accident? There's talks of a potential sabotage, and so we have to wait and see. But I think with the current environment, with internet, social media, various different media competitions, and even factional competitions within the country, we're going to find out the facts one way or the other sooner or later. So I don't think there's a major alternative reality or narrative that the government can put out and sort of live with for a very long time. So I guess we just have to wait and see what exactly caused the crash and what are the ramifications after.
Iran has confirmed that President Ebrahim Raisi is dead following a helicopter crash. The foreign minister was also killed. Raisi was known as the Butcher of Tehran. As a judge in the 80s, he sentenced thousands of political prisoners to death. More recently, as president, he was behind the brutal repression of women-led protests. He also directed a massive missile and drone attack on Israel last month. He was thought of as a likely successor to the country's supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei. Negar Mortazavi is a senior fellow at the Centre for International Policy and host of the Iran podcast. We spoke to her earlier about who precisely Raisi was.
So he is the new president. A hardline conservative clergy has been in the Islamic Republic within the system through the path of the judiciary since the 1980s, sort of since the beginning when he was a young clergy, but has was recently coming out of an unpopular election, actually, with the lowest turnout. He became president, and he was seen as sort of being the next candidate, or at least being groomed to be the next successor to the supreme leader once Ayatollah Khamenei, the current supreme leader, passes away. So not only president, but also potentially a supreme leader when and if that the death of the current leader happens. And so this would essentially impact short-term politics in Iran as far as the presidency, and also long-term sort of that project for the succession.
And explain the relationship between president and supreme leader, because that's not necessarily that common in other countries. What's the constitutional relationship?
Sure. So we have to note that the president is not the top person in power in the Islamic Republic. That person is the supreme leader. The supreme leader has been essentially the same person for the past couple of decades. Before him, there was Ayatollah Khomeini. So essentially, the Islamic Republic, after the revolution in Iran in the past 40 years, has only had two supreme leaders. That's the top person who essentially makes the long-term strategic decisions, national security, foreign policy, domestic policy for the country. The president is seen as the head of the administration, the executive power, one of the sort of three major leaders working under the supreme leader for the three main areas of power, which is the judiciary, the administration or the executive, and then also the parliament. So he's really equal with essentially the president is equal with two other roles, and then all of them would be under the supreme leader. So that's essentially the difference.
So what sort of policy impact will this have? The foreign minister, the president dying. Will this have any obvious policy impacts, do you feel?
I don't think it will have major domestic or foreign policy impacts, especially when it comes to the long-term strategic thinking. As I said, the policy goes through the supreme leader, and it's been long-term. And this president, Ebrahim Raisi, this was his first term, so he's only been president for 3 years. Same with the foreign minister. But this will create disruptions in the country. First of all, according to the constitution, the vice president who replaces the president immediately would then have 50 days to arrange new elections. So the country would have to have new presidential elections to elect a new president within 50 days. And then there's a parliamentary elections upcoming, and then the next presidential election. So this is going to have impact on the domestic politics of the country. And then looking at that question of succession for the long term, having a slate of candidates as potential succession to the supreme leader is also not something that can be done in short term. So it's going to create disruptions in that sense, but not so much in major policy directions of the country.
Could these new elections be a site for further protest? I mean, presumably, we all know that the level of protest against the government in Iran, presumably a new set of elections, could they become a location for greater protest?
It's possible, although the previous presidential election wasn't really a spark for
Yeah.
protest, but more sort of a show of discontent where voters actually, there was voter apathy, very strong legitimacy crisis that the regime is dealing with. So the voters essentially stayed home and boycotted the election. That's what came of the previous election. Nevertheless, it happened, and the president came as one of the most unpopular, and he started his work. The protests happened later in the case of the woman and hijab and all of that, but it's been going on. So the regime is dealing with a rolling sort of situation of legitimacy crisis, especially by the younger generation. But I think the elections could sometimes provide the spark for more protest, but could also just be a sort of platform where the voters show their discontent with the whole process.
Just finally, will there be conspiracy theories about what happened? I mean, I know they were probably in a very old helicopter because of the sanctions. So that's one of the impacts of the sanctions. Does seem to affect the quality of the aircraft available to the Iranian government? Will there be conspiracy theories about this? How will this be? Will this be accepted as just an accident?
Well, there will always be conspiracy theories. I obviously don't want to give them any
No.
legitimacy as far as rumors or conspiracies by repeating many, but there's still not clear what the reason was. Was this an accident? There's talks of a potential sabotage, and so we have to wait and see. But I think with the current environment, with internet, social media, various different media competitions, and even factional competitions within the country, we're going to find out the facts one way or the other sooner or later. So I don't think there's a major alternative reality or narrative that the government can put out and sort of live with for a very long time. So I guess we just have to wait and see what exactly caused the crash and what are the ramifications after.
That was Negar Mortazavi. She's Senior Fellow at the Centre for International Policy, talking about the now declared death of Ebrahim Raisi. He was the president of Iran.
Bir daha muhtasat veririm. Yo, bize deyin ki bu dərə hara yetişirik?
Yaz da yol
Yaza biləsiniz? Bəli. Yaxşı. Eni 38 38 dərəcə 42 10
saniye.
Bəli. İ'si 046 44 15 mümeyyiz 2. 44
44 derece.
44 dərəcə 15 02 dəli. İ.